don't throw your sewing machine out the window just yet. If you're experiencing that horrible thread nesting and jamming of your machine, I mean, of course you are, that's why you clicked this video. Don't worry. In this video, I've got my top 3 ways to avoid this thread jamming so you can just get on with your sewing. Welcome my new sewing friends. My name is Evelyn Wood and I'm the creator of VintageSewingSchool.com. And this video is actually an updated video of this one. So if you've actually watched that video already, this is the same content. It's just a much nicer video to watch, I think. An updated, much better quality. But luckily, sewing doesn't change. The process is the same. So we are talking, in fact, the same things because in my experience, there are 3 main reasons why we actually experience this thread jamming, this nesting of the threads where it all bunches up or your thread disappears, particularly if you've just picked up your machine and you're starting for the first time. Generally, it's one of these 3 main reasons, and they all fall under one category, and that is operator error. I know you didn't want to hear that, but trust me, you do, because it's actually a really good thing because it means it's really, really easy fix. And I'll bet you'll be back sewing by the end of this video. Number 1 is that you don't have long enough thread tails or the thread ends. So what do I mean? So when you are finished sewing, right, I bet what you do is you pull this out and you pull your fabric and you pull your threads and you cut your threads down here, right? Like this. And then you start sewing. What you need is you actually need to make sure your thread tails here, what I call tails, are actually quite long, about 15 centimeters or so at least, and they need to be about this long. Why? A lot of machines are covered, but in this section here where this loop goes up and down, you actually thread it through the little arm. And on this arm, when your machine moves, when you move your hand wheel, you can do it yourself. When you turn this hand wheel over, you'll see this arm comes up and down. And it actually draws up the fabric, like the thread, as it starts. And so it takes the thread with it. If you've experienced the thread just disappearing on you all the time, this is why. It needs that extra length to be able to draw up and actually do its thing and get ready to sew a stitch. And the second reason is actually not holding on to these little thread tails as your machine starts. For, well, exactly the same reasons what we just talked about. As you start to sew, remember, it draws those threads up. You can feel it even if you put your fingers there. And so what happens, it will snap back really quickly if you're not holding on to them and pull those threads up and then start bunching itself up and getting caught and knotted. And so that's what happens, I think you know. So all you need to do is actually just to kind of hold on to them as you start sewing. Or you can even just like your fingers pressure on there. Either one is fine, but just start and hold on to them just for those first few stitches and then it's fine. And the third reason is starting at the very, very edge at the fabric of the raw edges. So I'll show you in a minute. What I mean is if your needle is going down right on these little furry pieces on the edge here, on these outside pieces, if you pull your fabric apart, you know you get all these little fray parts, right? And so if your needle comes down onto these little frayed edges, it can take those little frayed bits down into the machine and it just knots it up and causes all sorts of problems. So this one's a real easy fix, is you just don't start at the very, very tippy edge. What you want to be doing is starting about 5 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch away from the very tippy edge, and then do your 1, 2, 3 stitches forward. And then when you reverse up that gap that actually then sews to the very edge and then continue sewing forward. So, right? So put your fabric in and instead of right to the edge, come in that 5 mil, use your hand wheel to wheel it down to get started. Hold it onto it with long thread ends. And then, as I said, come forward those few stitches and then reverse all the way back and then come forward and keep on sewing. And that should help eliminate that problem. If you're just new to sewing and want to start learning the right way and all these little tips just like this, I have a free class at vintagesewingschool.com that I think you'll really love to just get you started on your machine and get comfortable knowing what everything is and just sewing fabric. I'll leave some links in the description box down below. Now, if you tried all 3 of those and you're still having problems with thread jamming, I recommend you go watch this video here. It's on the 10 other reasons to avoid the thread jam that it might be, to find the reasons. It is a process of elimination. And this is just the first step, but is a lot of the problems when we first start sewing. So hopefully that has fixed your issues. If it did, please leave me a comment down below. I would love to hear which it was that helped solve your thread jamming and what project you're working on next. Until next time, my friends, happy sewing. Bye.